Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our film talk today with the Rutgers Jewish Film Festival. I'd like to welcome you all. I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Karma Foundation and the Blanche and Irving Laurie Foundation, as well as all of our other patrons and ongoing sponsors. We really appreciate your help in making our festival possible. I want to mention you might want to turn up your volume just a little bit. I think I'm speaking loudly, but Ruthy told us that she has sleeping children nearby and won't be able to speak particularly loud. So this is just a suggestion to you now to turn up the volume just a bit on your device. I also want to remind you that Sunday is the last day of our festival, and that will be the last day that you can watch films. So anything that's in your cart now or that you're still intending to purchase a ticket for, you have until Sunday to watch your movies. I am delighted to introduce Dr. Natasha Zaretsky, a cultural anthropologist who will be moderating our conversation today. Natasha teaches at New York University and is also a visiting scholar at the Center for Genocide and Human Rights at Rutgers, Newark. Her research centers on human rights, genocide, the politics of memory in the Americas, and Latin American studies. She co-edited Landscapes of Memory and Impunity, which examines the impact of the terrorist attacks on Argentina's Jewish community in 1994, and is currently completing a documentary film about the same topic. Her new book, Acts of Repair, Justice, Truth, and the Politics of Memory in Argentina, is due out in December from Rutgers University Press. So we're all thrilled and looking forward to that. Natasha has now turned her research to focus on memory and belonging among Soviet Jews in New York and the future of Holocaust memory at a time of rising nationalism in Europe. She has spoken at our film festival in the past. You may recall she was here in 2018, although live in person, for the Argentinian film, The Last Suit. And she's presented to our teachers in our Holocaust education program. And last but not least was the arrestee visiting scholar at the Bildner Center back in 2013. So Natasha, reading this, I'm thinking about our long history. It's so nice to have you back. And I'm delighted that you'll be here moderating the conversation. And I'll turn it over to you to introduce our very special guest speaker and have a conversation about her new film.
Thank you so much, Karen, and to the Bildner Center and the Rutgers Jewish Film Festival for having me here. It's a real pleasure to be here, not just because I love the film festival and the Bildner Center, but because this is such a powerful film and it speaks to questions that I feel like anyone can relate to in the world. And it's a real honor to have the director, Ruthy Pribar, here with us. So I will share a few words about her before turning to some questions to start a discussion, and then we'll turn to questions from the audience as well, which I'm sure you will all have. So a little bit more about Ruthy Pribar. Born in Israel, she graduated with honors from the Sam Spiegel Film School in 2012. And during her studies, she received a scholarship from the America-Israel Cultural Foundation for Promising Director. Her short films Last Calls and The Caregiver have both been screened at many international film festivals, garnering numerous awards. And alongside her work as a film director, Ruthy works as an editor on both fiction and documentary films and has participated with her work at Rotterdam Cinemart and is an alumna of the Cannes Festival Residency Program. And this Asi is her debut feature film, and it's one that has already been very successful, as we just learned. Just recently, it won 9 awards at the Israeli Academy Awards, the Ophir Awards, including Best Film. And with that, it means that that will be Israel's official entry for the Academy Awards in the United States. So I'm just going to give a round of applause. I know we don't have all the people in the room with us, but it's such a wonderful honor to have you here and to be here at this moment for this film when it's just emerging into the world. So thank you for being here to talk about the themes in the film and what inspired you, and how you really see its meaning. So I'm going to just very briefly ask some questions. And what was really interesting for me, as Karen noted, some of my own work is looking at the experience of post-Soviet Jews in the US. And, in Israel, of course, the Russian-speaking immigrant community is very large. It's about 1 million, representing about 20% of the population in Israel. And that is the subject of your film. Yet I know there's also a very personal connection to what the film means to you and why you wrote it. So I wanted to just begin by asking if you can talk a little bit about how your film was inspired by personal experience.
Mhm. This is a film about, well, I guess you've all seen it, so I'm not going to tell what it's about. But for me, it's a very personal film because I wrote it after losing someone very close to me. And my way to deal with the grief and the loss is always in art, and everything I deal with, I deal through art. So in the film, in a way, I wrote about an experience of a mother losing her daughter and how she is able to find meaning in the time that they have together, which is something that I was not able to do in my personal life. And I hope to achieve that when I have to go through something like that again. So this is where I started writing the film from. And I have to say that at the beginning, when I started writing it, which is 7 years ago, I was writing it in a way from the perspective, uh, uh, I mean, from my own perspective, which was a daughter's perspective. And of course, I wrote a film about a mother and daughter, and it's a film very much about motherhood, but I was not mother at the time. So, as you heard in the beginning of the conversation, I have my two sleeping kids right here, um, not in the kitchen, but at their bedroom, and my whole perspective of life changed with becoming a mother. So it made me change a lot of things in the film. So this is a film that is it has like two of these narratives: the narrative of the daughter and the narrative of the mother, and both of them are coming from my own experiences.
Thank you so much for that. And I think, even thinking about that process of 7 years, from when you first started working on it and how you changed yourself because you're both the director and the screenwriter. So this is really your idea, your words, and your vision coming to life. And in thinking about that vision and the character of the mother here, the character of Asia, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you conceived of her, why you chose to make her a nurse in particular, which felt like a role where she was constantly caring for other people in some way, and how you think it might help us, think about the question of motherhood in relation to the self as well.
Well, when I started thinking about Asia, I mean, I wanted her to be a nurse because I wanted her to be a caregiver. That it's very easy for her to be that kind of caregiver. It's very easy for her to care for others. But when it comes to her own daughter, it's not as easy. And it's not only because it's her own daughter, but it's because her daughter is dying, and we see that. We understand that throughout the film, but we see that there is some sort of distance between them. And although you can see her with strangers and being um, so devoted with her own daughter, it's like there's a barrier between them. And I wanted her to be that caregiver, so you could see that it's not like she's a cold person that is not able to connect to people. She is completely a very giving person, but with her own daughter, it comes with such a baggage. So in a way, she has to go through a lot of things in order to get closer to her daughter, in order to become that mother that she wants to be to her daughter, but is unable to. And one of the things that that I decided while building her character is that she needs to be in an age where she still has a lot of desires towards her life. Not that you don't have desires when you're older, but this is a woman that she's so young. She still has her whole life ahead of her, and she can make so many life choices. And I wanted her to be the young woman that is so close in age to her daughter, that in a way they could be sisters and they could want the same things and need the same things and be so close in those in their desires. And uh, from both the perspective, it's for Vika watching her mother and knowing that she would never be able to be that woman is devastating. And also for Asya looking at her daughter and thinking she would never be that woman. It's I mean, it's devastating for both of them. And it's that's what I wanted. Uh, and that's also a reason um, for them to be, it's that it would be hard for them to connect because of those reasons. So when they eventually are able to connect, it would mean so much and it would be such a journey for both of
Yeah, I think that question of like the kind of limits that exist, you know, and that tension that exists, that then they have those moments of connection makes that even more powerful as viewers to see that. And I think what really struck me were those moments of connection that came through and like these like small intimate moments, like touching her hair or focusing on the
them.
breaths or like the childhood songs or like these like really lovely small moments. And I'm wondering if you can talk about your choices to focus on that in the film, like as you know the director, like thinking about what to really focus on in displaying that kind of connection that they do find.
Hmm. So from very early on, I knew that I did not want her to be a mother that neglected her daughter. It's not that kind of mother. Okay, she became a mother at a very young age, so she needed to make a lot of sacrifices in her life to be a mother to this daughter. And she was never the kind of mother that just uh, did not give attention to her daughter, but she is distant from her, and you can see that from the very beginning. So I think the way to connect is through details, or through small moments, and this is the way that we all uh, connect in a way, because it's not, if you want to make change, it doesn't come through big things. And I wanted it to be very realistic in the portrayal of the relationship between them. And it happens slowly, and you can see it happening as it goes along. And this is a film that is plot wise, it doesn't go a long way. There's not a lot of changing. The plot is very simple, and what is um, and it gives a lot of time and emphasis on the emotional arc of the story of how this relationship evolves. And this is what was interesting for me to tell. So this is why I focus on those moments of intimacy, and reaching those moments is what I think pays off by the end of the film.
Yeah, and I think there's like such a power through that. And I think, you know, thinking about those dynamics and that relationship between Vika and Asya, something that really resonated with me as a viewer and also as someone who, you know, comes from an immigrant family, are the dynamics between mother and daughter, and like thinking about how Asya is speaking Russian and Vika answers in Hebrew, and that kind of dynamic. And so I'm wondering, in terms of the writing of the screenplay and the writing itself, how you saw language in thinking about the way to define these characters and their use of language and their use of Russian and Hebrew.
Mhm. So first of all, I have to say I don't speak Russian, which is, I mean, it's surprising to a lot of people that watch the film. But I'm not. I don't come from a Russian-speaking family, and I'm not. I didn't come from a. My parents are born and raised in Israel. Um, my grandparents are, of course, immigrants, like the majority of Israeli society. But that was long, long ago. So I don't think I don't come with that. But what was important for me, and I'll talk a little bit about why I chose for them to be Russian, because if we talk about language, then this is a part of it. I wanted Asa and Vika to be in a situation where they are completely, they have to rely completely on one another. And Israel, it's a very small community in a way. It's a small country, and a lot of people know each other. And usually you have your family or your roots or friends. And I wanted them to be in a way separated from their community, that they would have only each other to rely on. And then they would have no choice but to be there for one another when the time comes that they need to do that. And this is the reason I chose for them to be immigrants. And when I started thinking of what kind of immigrants, it was only this just made sense because the Russian community is such a large community in Israel, and I happen to know quite a lot of Russian people around me, so it was easier to write it from that perspective. And what I did do when I started writing, and I realized that this was going to be a film that large parts of it are going to be in Russian, then I went on to study Russian. So I went to study Russian, which obviously is a very, very difficult
Is that
language.
why it took 7 years from like the beginning?
No. I mean, I can't say I know Russian now, but I can read phonetically. And the film was, the script was written in Hebrew. And we only translated the film when we started the pre-production. When we had the casting and we had Alona as ASEAN, then we started working on the translation of the script according to the way she speaks and what would be the best for her, what she felt was right for her, because she obviously knows Russian much better than I do. What we did do is decide what would be in Hebrew and what would be in Russian. And there's a kind of mixture between them. Vika doesn't speak Russian at all, or not at all. He has some sentences, but very, very sparse. And Asya, most of the time she speaks in Russian, but she also sometimes speaks in Hebrew. And those are the things that we really worked a lot on, because we wanted it to first be very, very realistic, and also to create the distance between them, and then growing closer, which as they grow closer, Asa speaks more Hebrew and Vika speaks more Russian. So it's kind of like a very, I don't know if a lot of viewers are able to see that, because I don't know if the language is very clear, and some things are not always like you can't see it on the first time you watch a film. But we did put a lot of emphasis on language.
That's so fascinating to hear about. And just, for me as a viewer, like thinking about how when they were using Russian in public spaces, that allowed for like a certain kind of intimacy and privacy almost, that felt like it was a part of the story as well. So I thought that was really, really powerful. And, in thinking about the film in general, you have said that this is a film about women told from a woman's point of view. And I'm just wondering if you would also think of it as an Israeli film or as a Jewish film, thinking about this as part of the Rutgers Jewish Film Festival. How do you see it fitting into the world of Israeli cinema? And because it speaks to such powerful universal questions as well, I'm just wondering how you see it in relation to the world of Israeli cinema.
Well, first of all, I have to say that I'm Israeli and I'm Jewish. So this is who I am, and this is what I bring. But in a way, this is a very secular film in the way it looks at life and at death, and but it is very spiritual. So I don't know to say if it's Jewish or if it's Israeli. Again, it's like a question I haven't really thought about in that way, because this is who I am, and I'm not questioning if I'm. I mean, this is what I have to tell, and I'm from here, and this is the story that comes from here. And of course, it can happen in a lot of places, but the nuances and the way it's told is from my perspective.
Thank you so much for that. So I'm now going to open it up to the audience for questions, which I will be moderating from what you write into the chat. So we have a question from Edna, which is, I found Gabby, the caregiver, as bringing lots of depth to the relationship in the movie and to its messages. Could you elaborate on why and how you brought Gabby into the drama? And in parentheses, Edna wrote, loved the movie on many levels. So can you talk a little bit more about Gabby?
Mm-hmm. Gabby is in a way a way for for Ася and Vika to get closer. That's why he's there for. I mean, if I talk like from the perspective of a screenwriter, but he's also, I mean, he's actually a very special character, and one of the things that I have to say that it was very, very, very difficult to cast him because there's something about him. He's so gentle and so caring, and it's like we were looking for someone that would still be. That Vika could find attractive, but can be this full of heart, and it was very difficult to find. And when I started writing it, again, some people miss it, so I'm not sure everybody understand. But in the film, he's Arab, and it was not something we were looking for initially. Like, we could have taken someone else. It wasn't necessarily, he didn't have to be Arab, but we were searching while we were researching and going to the hospital where we shot. It was in Odessa in Jerusalem, and there were so many nursing aides that were young Arabs that it made sense to find someone who is Arab. And once we saw Camille, who plays Gabby, he was just, he entered the room, and my casting director, she saw his tattoo, and she asked him, what's the tattoo? And then he said, it's a lotus flower. And then he just said, I love flowers. And I was, I just fell in love with him. And I took that line of text into the script because it was just, he was Gabby. So returning to the script and why he's there, he's a way for these mother and daughter to get closer, but also for Asya to understand that although she's looking for answers that are external, what she needs to do is just be there for her daughter and not look for solutions to something that cannot be solved. And through him, she sort of learns that what she needs to do is just be there and hug her daughter and listen to her, and she doesn't need to do anything else. That this is what she's been doing through the whole film. She's doing things trying to help her daughter, and finally realizing that there's nothing she can do to help. She just needs to be her mother. So yeah, that's it, I guess.
Yeah, that's so powerful to think about how all these other characters and elements are there to help her find the answer, which was in herself this whole time. And thinking about how she's trying to help Vika, we have another question from Arlene, which is, what was Vika's illness?
It's not by mistake that the illness is not specified in the film. The reason for that is that I never wanted this to be a film about an illness, which is sometimes the case when you watch films that are about cancer or about other illnesses. And I wanted it to be a film about a relationship, and this is why the disease is not, no one names it. Medically wise, it is based on ALS, and we had a doctor that helped with the production and would help us with how it looked like and how Sheila was supposed to act upon that. So we did have ALS as our vision of the disease, but it's not. It is accurate, but I mean, for me, it's not an important thing about the film.
Thank you. There's another question that connects to some of what you were discussing about Gabi earlier, which is what was the casting process like, and who was cast first, and how did that choice then impact the second main actor, and so on?
So, what was very important for me in casting was finding mother and daughter that would look alike, because a lot of times when you see a film, you have a mother and daughter and they don't really look like one another, and you're sort of, you need to believe that they're mother and daughter, but you're, you have to sort of go over that and just believe it. And I wanted it to be very realistic in the way that you would actually be thinking, are these really a mother and daughter? Or are they sisters? Because they're so similar to one another. So this is something that I was dreaming about, but I didn't know if I could find the perfect match. And what you do when you cast is you search for both roles, and that's what we did. We searched for ASEAN, we searched for Vika separately. So we saw quite a bunch of actresses, and both Alana, Eve, and Cheryl were magnificent. But what we didn't need to do is find the perfect match, which somehow, I don't know how, but I would not have imagined how similar they look once they were together in the room. It was a huge surprise because, okay, now when I see them together, obviously they look so similar that it's amazing. But when you see them and they look a bit different, their hairstyle is different, and I mean, and they're different people, then it's not so easy to see the resemblance. But once they were both in the room and we started doing matching scenes with the actresses, with Asia and Vika, it was very clear. This is exactly what I've been looking for. From the moment I saw them together, it was just, this is it. And we didn't have to search any longer, which was quite a relief to find the actresses that could do it, to pull it off. And both of them are so talented that I was very lucky to have them.
That's incredible. They really have like such a striking resemblance that it really
and
is
a chemistry. I mean, just an unbelievable chemistry that made it.
It's really wonderful to watch. And thinking about the role of Asya, there was another question from Asher that is, the film shows that a single mother relies on drinking to cope with her daughter's illness. This seemed very real, yet given her economic challenges and her work in healthcare, perhaps not. Was the decision to have the mother look for an outlet in drinking at a bar based on demographic research or anecdotes?
Okay. This is a question I have to say. I'm sorry, Asha. I don't know you personally, but this is a question that comes mostly from men in the audience. Asya is not like an alcoholic in any way, and not like a heavy drinker. She likes to sometimes go out and drink. She's not drunk. Yet when viewers from a male perspective see a woman in a bar, it's sort of, it's especially if she's a mother, it like comes as I don't know, it's a dissonance that they cannot that they cannot fill out for themselves. So I've been getting that from very like quite a few times, and I think like when you see a film about a man, even a father, dealing with his sick son or with a difficult situation, you would definitely see a scene. It's even a cliche to see him go to the bar and drink, and um, to sort of have the time to think, or have the time to free their mind a bit from things. And when you see a woman do that, it raises so much hostility towards that I find that interesting. And this is why it's there. I mean, you don't see her drink that much. She drinks, let's say, twice in the film. You see her drink twice, which you cannot say she's a drunk or an alcoholic. So I have to say, you have to pay attention why you are thinking that, and why is that an issue for women to be drinking and going out to clubs or to a bar, or dancing. Why is that a problem? Even if you are a mother and even if you're caring for a sick child, you still need your time to process things, and it's okay to go out. It's okay to still have desire. Although you're dealing with death, it doesn't mean you're dead yourself. And that is something that was very important for me. Asia is a woman that does not succumb to her um, to what life has brought her. She's still very lively. She's sexual, and she's not afraid to say it, and she's not afraid to act upon it. And I mean, this is like Natasha said before, this is a film about a woman told from a woman's perspective. This is my perspective.
Yeah, it's very interesting because this is my first time in a Q&A about this. I haven't been to the other ones where you may have been asked that question. So it is really interesting about like this question of, the perception of mothers and motherhood, that this is also inviting viewers to be questioning and exploring. So it's really fascinating to look at that in that way. And the next question actually turns to kind of like the world outside the film a little bit. So Shira Haas is now almost a household name among American Jewish TV fans because of the popularity of Shtisel and her recent TV series Unorthodox.
Right.
So when was your casting done in relation to those shows is the question.
Well, Shtisel was done quite a while before Asia. As to Unorthodox, it came out in March, I think, and Asia came out on April. So Asia was shot before Unorthodox, so she was not like internationally acclaimed actress. And obviously, after her Emmy nomination, she's become a very famous actress. But before that, she was known, I would believe, for many Jewish cinema lovers, because she's done quite a lot of films and she's very, very talented. But now she's like booming, which is incredible for her. She completely deserves it, and I'm very, very happy for her because she's amazing.
That's really wonderful. And it's interesting how like this film is a part of like this like broader landscape of Jewish storytelling about women's lives as well. And thinking about the character of Gabby again, we have another question from Eric, which is, shouldn't it have been obvious to Asya that her idea for Gabby to become more than Vika's friend was bound to have a bad outcome? And, for those of us who watched the film, we know that she then apologized to Gabby, and then, she herself like seemed to have some regrets about it. But the question is like, shouldn't have Asya have known from the start that this wouldn't have been a good idea?
Well, I mean, we don't always know that what we do will turn out the way it does. And I think what she had in mind, like, when her daughter tells her that that's the thing she's most afraid of, or that's the thing that's on her mind, then the only thing she wants to do is help her. And I mean, I can say from the perspective of a mother, when my children need something, the first thing I want to do is just give it to them or be able to help them in that. And I think she's definitely a misguided decision, and she realizes it later on, and she doesn't. I mean, she doesn't push him. She sees what is true. There is a chemistry between them. There is something going on. It's not like she's imagining it. She sees that her daughter is into him. She sees her feelings towards him, and she wants this for her. She wants her to feel wanted. And I mean, later on, she realizes she made a mistake. But when she did it, it was for all the good intention in the world. So.
Audience, you're welcome to continue asking questions. And as we're waiting for more questions, I'll just ask, in terms of the actual production, I know that I'm thinking about like telling it from a woman's perspective. Can you also tell us a little bit more about like the behind the scenes? So you're the director and screenwriter, was the cinematographer also a woman? Like, who were all the other main people involved in the actual making of the film?
So, like we started the conversation, you were saying we won 9 Academy Awards. All of them were granted for female crew, which is the first time in Israel that something like this has happened. So the cinematographer is a woman, and the composer is a woman, and the editor, and I mean the majority of the crew on set were women. And I mean, this is a choice that was built on first, there are incredible, talented women that don't get the same, um, um, they don't always get the jobs that the men do, just because this is the way it is in the film industry. And I knew that once I was in the position where I can choose who to work with, I would definitely take women, because I can, and because I think they're wonderful. And I think that none of the women I chose to work with um, they were all the best choices I could make. And it made, for me, it made the experience much easier, because I didn't have to deal with a lot of sexist remarks, which you get a lot on sets, and men explaining to you why you should be doing this or that. And again, I apologize for all the male viewers here. I think this is a film that is really for all audience, for male and female. But as a female director, part of the reason that there aren't so many women directors is that it's a very, very difficult task, and you need to manage so many people, and it's just, it's my way to change the inequality that is based in the film industry. And when I got that chance, that's what I did. And I'm, I'm very, very happy I did, because I think it got us to very, very good results.
That's amazing. And obviously winning 9 awards, speaks to the power of the choices you made and what it means to like to have this space for all of this talent that you have on the film. We have a question here from Hiola, which is, I have to admit that if it were not for the title, I would not have known if the movie was about the mother or about the daughter. It seems that there were two parallel stories, mother's and daughter's experience. Was that on purpose?
Yeah, it was on purpose. I mean, everything in the film, when you do it, it's on purpose. There's not a lot of room for just, making mistakes, or just something that happens on the way. You usually plan it for so many years. The reason you work on a film for 7 years is that everything is choices. You make all the choices. So the reason I chose for the film to be titled Asa is because she's the one who left by the end of the film. First of all, I think you see the film, a lot of it is through her eyes, and this is a film that speaks a lot about motherhood. But also by the end of the film, when you finish it, okay, you have these two characters, but Asa is the one that's going to stay alive, and Asa is the one who's going to be needing to deal with the consequence of her actions and what has happened in her life. And I feel that once you're a mother, it doesn't end if you lose your daughter. You remain a mother for the rest of your life. And this is something I wanted viewers to take with them, to think about what is going to happen next in Asa's life. And part of that is what I spoke about before, the fact that she's a very young woman, that she's still able to completely alter her life and do something else. She's still able to even give birth again. She could be a mother again. So this is something that is not out spoken out in the film, but it is something that I wanted viewers to carry out in their mind once they step out of the film. So I don't know which ones of you thought about it or had that in mind, but this is something I want for the viewers to have. And that is why the title is Asa and not Vika, or Asa and Vika, or something else.
That really comes through. And I think like even from like the beginning of our discussion, like thinking about the relationship between them and the tension between them, the differences, and yet that coming together. And then in the end, as you said, Asi is the one who is left. And it's really this question about motherhood at the heart of this. And another question that we have that we had come in is about the process itself, and whether there were any surprises in the process. process for you?
Again, can you repeat the
Whether
question?
there were any surprises in the process of making the film, anything that was surprising in the filmmaking itself, or maybe even in like the reception of the film and what's happened after it entered into the world.
Wow, I haven't thought about that. Um, well, I have to say that there was a lot of conversation about the ending of the film and before shooting. I mean, people that read the script would talk a lot about the ending, and I have to say that not so many people in these Q&As or once the film has gone out, not a lot of people talk about the ending as like I mean, in the reviews that the film has got, it says a lot about the fact that the ending was very strong, but I thought it would be more controversial, and it has not been. I mean, I have not gotten a lot of response about how controversial the ending is. And this is something that I find very reassuring about the film, because you reach such a level of intimacy with the characters that you don't ask yourself, why is she doing that? You accept it. And I think that is why I'm not being asked so much about it, which is a good sign for me. And a surprising one. So
Yeah, that's a really like interesting thing that like hasn't come up in this discussion. And like to think about like when you're making it and writing it and thinking about it, like imagining like what the response will be and what will be controversial or not. And then the fact that there are no questions about it, you know, says something to the power of the story and that intimacy that you talked about that you were able to create for us as viewers. So we have another question. Maybe I'll just ask this question that just came in from Meryl, who said, yes, I wondered about the ending as well. Are there any comments about that in other reviews? You mentioned that in the reviews, they said it was a strong ending, but have there been any other comments about the more controversial elements of it, perhaps?
not really. That's what I'm saying. And a lot of film critics have watched the film and really loved the ending and felt like it was a very, very powerful scene that they not expected, or that was very heart-wrenching for them. But no, I mean, nobody really talks about how controversial it is, or about the whole taboo of euthanasia. It's something that hasn't that hasn't really come up at conversations at all, which was a surprise for me.
And so this other, so Meryl continues saying, it really speaks to our times and today's issues. In the past it would have been. So it also speaks a little bit to our moment. And then we have another question from Sarah, which is that I think it was in response to the fact that it was, you know, how many women were on the crew and like what that meant in terms of the industry. And Sarah says, that is amazing to hear, so rare in the industry. Can you tell us about future projects that you are working on now?
Mm-hmm. So there's another feature film that is we're raising funding for at the moment, which is going to be shot in Israel. And there's actually another project that I'm working on that's going to be shot in the States. So two big projects, both of them are women-driven stories and female characters. Yeah, very excited to start working on a new film. It's good to keep working.
Well, that sounds wonderful, and I'm sure that we will be seeing much more from you, and excited to see what happens with Asia in terms of like the Oscars and the Academy Awards and everything else. So with that, I think we will conclude this session, and I hope everyone out there in the audience joins me in congratulating Ruthy Pribar for this wonderful film that you've shared with us. And thank you again for sharing your vision and this story with us all.
Thank you so much for coming and listening and watching the film. It means a lot, especially at these times where everything is really, so there's more unknown than known. in Israel and in the world. And I think this is a time for films to connect people. So I'm really happy to be here and speak to you.
Thank you so much, Ruthy, again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.